Let's see if this works. Did I not start streaming? Oh god. See, normally I use ad blockers. I don't have to go through this crap. Alright, well. I guess let's get started. Alright. So, I set my workspace up a little bit before I started streaming just because I'm super paranoid about I don't know, like passwords and private information getting out. So I set up a incognito session. So hopefully, oh, voice volume is low. Let me turn that up. Is it better now? Let me know if this is adequate. I think I can turn it up higher. I'm also trying to lower the microphone closer to my mouth, but I'm worried I'll breathe too heavily into it. Alright, cool. I guess let's get started. So this is just a fresh Visual Studio project. I guess I'll just start creating shit. Okay, let's see here. See if that works. I can never figure out how to set this up. I expected. Did you forget to add? Her? Maybe I didn't set the... Oh, I think I know what it is. Okay, there we go. See if the stream's still working. I'll get started. Alrighty. So, I guess let me just start writing some notes about what I'm trying to do. Yeah, so I guess I wanted a small project for maybe a few days to write something from scratch, and in the process maybe use some of the newer Windows APIs I've never had a chance to use. So for example, I know DirectWrite is sort of the quote-unquote modern text rendering engine for Windows nowadays, and so I wanted to see what that was like. It's probably awful, but it'll be a good chance to try it out. And I think that uses Direct2D, which is sort of their vector rendering engine on top of D3D. So maybe I'll use that too for basic UI rendering. And beyond that, I guess, since I've never really implemented a text editor, but I know Emacs really well, I think, and so I'm going to try to sort of use some of the basic ideas that I know from there, like, the sort of buffers and Windows abstraction and using gap buffers as the data structure for doing fast amortized insertions and deletions in place and stuff like that. So, all right. I guess to find a place to start, I'll just start creating a to-do list. I think maybe, when you start writing something like this, you can kind of start anywhere. Like you could start with the data structures, or you could start with maybe some aspect of the rendering or whatever. I think I'll just start creating the window, and then I'll maybe figure out how to use DirectWrite to display some text in a window. And then we'll start adding the buffer abstractions after that. So, okay, let's just start like that. Okay. I guess the first thing, I have to register a window class. Oh, great, Windows. Oh, I guess this is it. Does it really not have auto-completion? Off to the great start. Okay, I think it's on the fritz. Let me just force it to rebuild this. Boom, boom, boom. I guess if it's being awkward, I can just start using MSDN. That is pretty awful. Definitely like to have auto-completion when you're doing any Windows stuff. Okay, here we go. Okay. What do you have to fill in here? You have to fill in the instance and the window proc. I think can start being the default window proc. The class name. What does this function do? Window style, overlap window, visible. Oh no. That was that one. Let's see if that works. Oh, it didn't show anything. I guess because I haven't pumped the window loop. Why is it not being redrawn? I guess because I haven't set a background brush. guess there's a good chance to debug stuff. Is it really hanging? Okay. Why is the watch window not there? Alright, that's probably just a background brush issue. First argument is alright. Do I really have to set the background brush? Off to a great start. I usually do my own background drawing. I don't think this works, right? This is the wrong type. Alright, alright, alright. I think I'm gonna have to find out about how to draw some text with DirectWrite. I looked a little bit at this API before I got started just to make sure it wasn't a complete dead end. It's the usual COM mess, so it's a little verbose. PCH DWrite. I think we need D2D as well. DWrite create factory. Multiple in-process components. Okay, I guess that's good. All right. Okay, so that worked. I think I just have to link it. All right. So that's the DirectWrite factory. I think I also need a D2D factory. So this is the usual conmcrap, where you need some sort of factory root object, and then once you have that, you can just call member functions on it to get other things. ID2D1 factory. Mistakes, factory type. See what this is. Single threaded, sounds good to me. Factory options. Factory options. What are factory options? Oh, there's also a version that just fills that in for you. So I think this will work. Not referenced. Okay, that's the same thing as this. All right. We should probably also. Yeah, that's not what I meant to do. Right. H result. Okay. Okay, so that worked. And just make sure the stream is working. I'm sorry I'm not talking too much. I'm just getting over the hump of banging out the initial code. Oh, the stream went down? Alright, I'll just keep cranking. This part is not very interesting anyway, I think. I'm just trying to get some basic stuff on the screen. I'll try to check the chat sporadically, but I don't actually have a secondary monitor at my home office, so it's all one monitor, unfortunately. Alright, so that seemed to work. And I think I created the window correctly, I just didn't paint the background, so I have to do that soon. Probably also have to do something when the window gets sized. So I think what I'm gonna do. Alright, so when I looked at this like earlier today, it looks like you have to create a D2D render target corresponding to your H window, and then you can do all your stuff through that. So I believe that's called a D2D HWind render target. Something like that. Well, that was the wrong one. Let's look at this shit. Oh yeah, this one. ID2D H1 render target. Okay, there. I believe we have to match that to the window size. And if we resize the window, we have to recreate the window target. So let's see. Use this one, create H1 render target. Oh, yeah. One thing that's really goofy, well, a little bit goofy about D2D from what I've seen just browsing the docs is that they have a lot of value types that you don't normally see in COM APIs. So it feels more like D3DX in those areas than traditional D3D, for example. Anyway, what is render target properties? Yeah, just do the default. And the next one is hwind render target properties. And you have to pass the window. That's it, it looks like. I guess I should make sure to release the old one. I've already done that. Alright, let's just do some stepping to see what's going on here. Did that work? Yeah, it did. It took a while, so it probably did something. Alright. I think the next thing is take the render target and then you do begin draw. That worked. We should be able to do it clear. And in theory, because this D2D render target is bound to the window handle, this should actually redraw the background. Please. Well, it's definitely not doing that. Do I have to validate the rect? I wonder if I did something weird with the window creation. I don't think so. I also shouldn't need that. Oh, actually, I know what it is. No, that was bullshit. But yeah, you don't need to, when you do get message, the message queues are all per thread, not really per window. So even when you provide a window argument, I think it just filters it. So I don't want to do that regardless. Translate message, dispatch message, that always good to me. For the sizing. Alright. Oh, QED is just like, I mean, yeah, like at the end of a proof, but also a, like I guess like quick editor or something like that, some sort of acronym. Oh man, you gotta love this shit. What am I missing with this window proc? If anything. What if I... Okay, forget all this. What if I did like old school GDI fill rect? Well, it's doing something all right. Okay, I'm getting all confused with my different processes. Alright, let's see what's going on here. Client rectangle looks reasonable. There's something weird going on. That's bizarre. So now it's actually filling with white. When I was doing black brush, I was getting some fucked up window color. Is there a... I don't actually know if there's a red brush. Yeah, I don't think there is. It's an interesting definition of black. Maybe black just means transparent or something. Anyway, I should really know this shit. Alright. I guess let's do this. I think it's supposed to clear to black by default. Why did I fuck up with this window class? I mean, this is the only thing I would normally add that I didn't. But it shouldn't matter a damn thing. Overlap window invisible. Pass on the instance. Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll just chill for a sec. Yeah, this should be archived. I'm going to, well, it is recording in the background, so I guess I'll upload it separately if need be. But yeah, we have a week off because we just, I work at Oculus and we just shipped like 3 weeks ago. So there's a few weeks of kind of post-ship wrangling, and now I am finally able to take some time off, which is nice. How long do I have to stare at this shit? Okay, I'm gonna try doing more of the GDI stuff just to see what's going on with the redrawing, because this is crazy. Fill rect. I guess I'll create a brush. Create solid brush. Alright, so this really is fucking working. So it's just direct 2D being super weird. Let's just remove this for now. So do I have the right factory? D3, D2. This looks right. Okay, let me go and read the MSDN docs. Begin draw before finishing. The only side effect to begin to string this. I see. So this is an H result. We're off to a great start with Direct 2D. I have to say that much. Alright. No errors. If there have been errors. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I am an idiot. I passed the 0 size for the render target. And this is why I fucking hate C++. This thing has default arguments that are probably like 0, or at least not the right thing. Jesus H. Christ. Alright. Height is width, line rectangle, right. Bottom equals top, which is the usual upside down bullshit. And I guess we pass this according to those docs. And presto, we have a fucking thing rendering correctly. If I change this to like red, presumably it's actually going to work. Alright. Well, we're almost done. I have a red window. I declare that success. Alright. So, yeah, and I think one thing I should test here for sure is... Oh, I also, when I close the window, the process is still running because I'm not posting quit message. I think if I do that, the thing will actually shut down correctly. Yep. But yeah, because I create the render target on resize, it should just work when I do this. So that's good. Alright. Okay, back to, so that's the 2D render target crap. And I believe that worked too, at least. There's no errors. So let's go and look at the DirectWrite stuff. So you get a factory. And God knows what you do with that. Apparently you do a lot of crap here. I think there's something called text format, which you have to do. So so I guess it's DirectWrite text format. DWrite factory, create text format. Font family, consoles, which is the same they use for this editor. Font collection, looks optional. Font weight. Let's say DWrite font weight. What's the difference between normal and regular? That's pretty arbitrary. It looks like there's no difference. Font style. Normal. Font stretch. Normal. Font size. Let's say 36. Locale name. Usual Windows locale stuff. I see, and then the com. So maybe this. Let's just make sure that works. Yep, that worked. I guess the next step is when we're doing the redraw here, we should actually draw some text. I think it's called draw text, right? Is it not? It is. But it's not auto-completing. Alright. String length, rectangle, and format. And what is the format? Oh, so that's a text format pointer. I see. So text. That had to be Unicode. Let's just create some text up here. Oh yeah, rectangle. Probably client rectangle, just for draw it in the whole client rectangle for now. And then last thing is the text format, presumably. No, oops. No overloaded function takes 4 arguments. Alright, let's go and look at this shit. Create text format. How do I do this stuff? Where's the render target? String, size, text format. Oh, and brush, I see. So we need a text brush too. I think that thing is called I2D2 solid color brush. No? Okay, so it looks like the second thing we have to recreate based on the render target shit is this. Create solid text brush. No? Oh, from the render target, not the factory. Man, Visual Studio is just, or rather, Visual Assist is shitting itself recently. It's really not able to do much of anything. Maybe I got this wrong. So these are like the really low level. Yeah, it's only getting the immediate color brush properties. I see. So this doesn't, so you just give it a color. Can it convert from argument? I see. So I really do need the solid color. Alright, so it wanted a brush. Okay, this is fucking useless. I guess I'm just gonna go in MSDN all the time. Okay, so I'm way up in the weeds with these arguments. So text, text length, format. Oh, and then a special, it's not a Windows rectangle, it's a fancy smancy D2D rectangle. A layout rectangle. Oh, I think it's just because it's a this is right. Stop, spawn. So is this layout rect? This is again by value, which is kind of weird. Or I guess not by value, constant reference. And then the brush. Alright, this is just the helper. Holy shit, guys. There's text. I guess let's get something longer than that. Alright. That's pretty good. Looks like it's doing word wrapping. I was kind of expecting it to just clip it. Alright. It is insanely warm in Seattle, by the way. It's almost 9 here, and I swear it's like 85 degrees in my house. Alright. So this seems pretty good. So if you think about what you need in terms of text rendering for a text editor, you definitely don't want it to do the word wrapping. So that's a little too helpful, honestly. That's a little too much value add, if you know what I mean. I think the way you actually want to be able to use this is just do line rendering, and ideally have a way of getting metric data back about the layout. So you should be able to ask, like, for the 10th character, what are the XY bounds? So you can do hit testing and caret placement and stuff like that. Once I get to the buffer rendering algorithm stuff, there's some interesting data structure stuff about how you handle cursor movement, because in some sense the underlying data is like byte-based or character-based, but if you move your cursor down, I don't know if you guys have ever thought much about this, but like in a text editor, when you have a cursor at this point, it's not really visible, certainly not with mono fonts, but suppose you had like a non-mono font and you move the cursor down, and for whatever reason there's a huge disparity in the width of the characters on the two adjacent lines. So the question is, where do you expect your cursor to go? do you want it to go to the same column you're in, column being counted in characters, or do you want it to be like pixel based? And you can kind of, I would certainly say in a text editor for programmers, you'd want it to be character based probably, but certainly in something like a word processor, it seems to be, I haven't actually tested this. I wonder if I have installed Word. No, I don't. I guess I can try WordPad. So let's have some small text here. And let's do some smaller text and just blow up the size. So if I have the cursor here and I go down, where does it go? Yeah, so you can see it actually does like screen-based cursor movement, which is not super, I mean, it's not the hardest thing in the world to do, but the most obvious thing to do if you're a programmer is just to say, well, I'm in column 30, so I'm going to go to column 30 of the adjacent line when I go up and down with my cursor keys. But anyway, so for this and other reasons, you want your text rendering system to ideally give you back metrics data on how it laid things out. So I did actually check that DirectWrite gives you this. So without that, it would kind of be a dead end because you'd kind of have to go and replicate all the glyph placement yourself just in order to know where the fuck things ended up. Yeah, I mean, Visual Studio, I guess I've never actually used Visual Studio with proportional fonts, but I guess it's rare enough that they don't really bother. And I guess you can kind of argue, well, certainly when you're moving with the, I don't know actually. I think I could argue both sides of that for a programming text editor. But yeah, I would certainly say for something like a word processor, if you don't handle screen position coordinate based cursor movement, you're not doing your job. But anyway, so okay, so enough fucking around. So I think this validates that the basic text rendering works. I think the next thing I should do, so I'll just actually leave this for now, and I will, because I just wanted to validate the basic DirectWrite stuff works, and I'll return to it later when I have more of a serious buffer rendering algorithm going on. So I think I'll start working on buffer stuff. All right. So an Emacs buffer, let's see here. Emacs style buffer. Growable string of text. Gap buffer algorithm for amortized insertion deletion. So I don't know if you guys have looked at I don't know if you guys have ever looked at like text algorithms for buffers, but you know, one of the things that you definitely can't do in like a real text editor that you can probably get away with if you have like a text edit box in a UI widget library is to just every time someone presses a key and inserts a character, having to do like a mem copy of the whole tail just to move it over one space and put the gap in for the new character. You can't do that, right? In general, like it's really slow. So Emacs's approach, which is ancient, and I think it's used by a lot of text editors these days, is to basically have a single contiguous buffer in terms of memory layout, but for there to be a gap in the middle that corresponds to the most recent insertion or deletion position. So this is going to be a very approximate drawing, but suppose this is like the entire allocated range that I span here, and this is my shitty ASCII art. This would be the gap. So one way of thinking about this is that, you know, if you think about the standard algorithm for dynamic arrays, it has the gap at the end, right? So let me just copy this over. Oh my god. Um, yeah, so the standard algorithm for this stuff would go like this, and then it would have the gap at the end. And so in the standard, when you do like, I don't know, SD vector pushback, it can do fast pushbacks because it has the gap at the end. So except in the case where it actually has to grow the whole buffer, if you do a pushback, it basically just does this, right, until it runs out of gap. And then once when it runs out of gap, it then has to actually enlarge the whole buffer by doing a reallocation. And so basically, like, standard dynamic arrays are great for growing at the end, but they're not great at growing in the middle. So the gap buffer is basically just saying, hey, we can put the gap anywhere. It doesn't have to be at the end. And so the idea is, I mean, since I'm in a text editor right now, it's sort of easy to illustrate. But if you think about how it works, normally you move your cursor around, and then once you've moved your cursor to a point, assume that until I start inserting or deleting at my current cursor position, the gap in this text buffer I'm editing could be anywhere. It could be at the end, at the beginning, or anywhere in between. But the first time I do a manipulation that changes the buffer, like either expanding or contracting it by inserting or deleting a character, it will basically move the gap from wherever it currently is to at the point where my cursor is. So you can imagine it starts like this, and then if I suppose my cursor is where it is here in the buffer, and I then type a key to insert something. Before letting me insert, it's basically going to do a mem move of the gap over there and shuffling everything in between the old and the new gap position over by whatever the gap size is. And then once it's done that, you can do the insert and delete just the normal way by just incrementing the gap start position. So this is like the classic algorithm for text buffers. And, you know, it doesn't require fancy trees or anything. It's just a simple array technique. So, yeah, we should definitely implement that. So yeah, let's get that started. So buffer. This thing I call a buffer is going to be a little bit like an Emacs buffer in that it doesn't just have sort of the pure data structure parts. It also has a bunch of metadata. So it has a name, it has a cursor position, in addition to all this gap info. So I'm just going to put some of that stuff in. So this is the name and the data pointer, which is just like any other array base pointer. And we need these buffer positions, which I'm just going to type def to give some semantic clarity. And so there's going to be an end position, which the end position is not like the end of the capacity. The end would basically be here in this array. And then there's going to be the gap start position, the gap end position, which I think are self-explanatory. Like the gap start would be here, the gap end would be here. These are set up so that they form, like half-open arrays. So basically, in general, the populated parts of an array go from 0 to gap start position, and from gap end position to end position, if that makes sense. So step 1, let's see here. Create buffer. And just remove the name from now, it's sort of extraneous. Create buffer. You create it with an initial gap size, which is basically the same. Yeah, I work at Oculus. The gap size is basically the same as the capacity in a dynamic array data structure. I'm going to call it initialize buffer. going to do it like this. And do I use virtual alloc? Yes, I do. Size is the gap size. Allocation type is mem commit mem reserve. Page read write, I think. And then gap start position is 0 because there's gap end position is 0. Or sorry, gap end position, let's see here. End position is 0. Yeah, I'm just thinking of in the order they actually occur logically. Because in this case, basically, it's empty and it's all gap. So yeah, I think this is the correct way to look. And then this is essentially gap size. Missing type specifier. I guess I need I can't remember if, no, I think commit and reserve are definitely separate. Yep. Page read write. Yeah, that looks good to me. Initialize buffer. Store position, gap position. All right. I think probably I'm going to make a helper function to render the buffer. So basically, in general, you're dealing with two disjoint strings. So this is sort of a chance to do proper, I guess, more proper layout. Do I want to do this first or after? Actually, no. Let me just right buff right buffer to debug right buffer. Okay. I guess I'll be naughty. Did I spell that right? Yeah. No, that's not really what I want. Copy memory temp buffer data plus buffer gap start position. Gap start position. This is just, you know, obviously this is prone to overflow, but I'm just going to be sort of negligent for a sec. Does this look right? So right to this, from this. No. What am I doing? Like that. So this would be the first part of the buffer. Alright, insert character, buffer, char character. gap, grow if necessary. So I'm just going to make sure that for my initial testing that the buffer is plenty large. Then I'll do buffer data, buffer gap start position, character. So right now this only writes the initial part of the buffer. But okay. I'm just going to skip this for a sec. So you have a buffer, and then you initialize the buffer, and I make it, let's say, 32 bytes, and then insert character. So actually, output debug buffer. What did I write? Or what did I call it? Okay. So if I do this, well, it didn't print anything, which I think is actually right. If I do an insert character, yeah, that actually worked. You can see it down here. That's a little bit invisible. Okay. Okay. So far so good. So the basic insertion is always going to look like this, but there's going to be, like in order to fulfill these invariants, all right, what's the other one I wanted to do? Cursor position. So insert character is always implicitly at the cursor. So, but we can only do insertions at the gap. So that's sort of why we have to ensure that the gap is coincident with the cursor, if it isn't already. So let's see here. Shift gap to cursor. Shift gap to cursor. So this is like I guess a classic move memory dance. And I think there's two cases depending on whether you're shifting it forward or backward. So if cursor position is before, actually let me just do an early out. Gap start position. No, actually, let me just do it implicitly. So if the cursor is before the gap, then gap distance, or gap delta, which is how much it has to shift over by, is this much. So if you go back to the diagram, suppose the gap is currently here, and we wanted to move it. Oh my god. Suppose it was here and we wanted to move it here. essentially all this data that is here has to get copied to here. So the destination of that is this, which is the gap delta. It has to be copied there. All right. So let's see. I think we have to do move memory because we're doing it backwards. So we're copying stuff from, well, to the gap minus the gap delta. So data plus gap end position minus gap delta. And it comes from the cursor position. And there's this much of it. Does that make sense? Let me check. Oh really? My frickin' window is not... What's the lowest part you can see? I thought that was supposed to be the whole window. I guess I can go look at the... Yeah, awesome. Oh, I see. That is weird. What the fuck? Sorry about that. That's a good catch. I know nothing about OBS. All right. Can you guys tell me if that did it? Man, I feel really stupid now. I thought for some reason when you chose monitor capture it just automatically actually fitted it. All right. All right, I think we're good. So, okay, let me just make sure I got the math here right because the ordering is a little delicate, I guess. So moving the gap earlier, which means that this data has to essentially go here. Yeah, I think that's right. So I copied it to before the gap and from where the cursor currently is. Okay, that makes sense to me. And I also have to now update the gap positions. So the gap position is now at the cursor position. Well, I guess the other way of doing this, which is maybe a little weird, but you can also just do this. In fact, I could do the same thing here, which has a certain symmetry to it. I think I'll leave it like that. All right, and then it's sort of symmetric but opposite signs on the other case. So in this case, the cursor position is ahead, and so let's look at it here. Suppose we're here and we're now going from the middle case to the up case. So my cursor is here, and the gap is here. In that case, I have to copy. It's actually the same situation. If I go from here to here, I have to copy this part in the gap. So I have to fill the gap. All right. Since I'm moving this forward, I'm copying it now from gap start position. I think that's the difference. I think one thing that's a little bit confusing maybe is the different coordinate systems. Like, these are byte offset. I think I'm just going to leave them like this. I shouldn't call them offset. Well, let's see here. Let's leave them like this for a sec. Let's finish this. Okay, I want to look at this buffer. Okay, so cursor position not initialized. Data, no data. Although the data is actually serial initialized, which is sort of a side effect of using virtual analog. Okay, and now I should have stepped into that. Cursor position is here, gap position is here. End position wasn't set correctly. I guess end position should always shift to when you insert. Um, so this is sort of moving the cursor along. I think I'll have to do some. Let me just step in the function. Ensure gap size is 1. And so this function is basically this function basically, it's like, in a dynamic array, you check the capacity. If the capacity isn't up to what you want to insert, you have to grow it. So this will do that. And the way you check that is gap size is gap end position, gap start position. If gap size is less than minimum gap size, then we have to realloc. Or we could do a big virtual alloc and grow it in place. Okay, I think I have a trick I'm going to do. I'm going to do this early, and then I'm going to move the gap to the end, sort of intentionally. I'm going to make, rather than making this the cursor position, I'm just going to make it an arbitrary position. This will be do I really want to do it this way? Actually, I think for now, I'm actually going to get rid of the cursor and make it more stateless, because there's some complicated invariants relating to updating the cursor that I want to get right separately. So this will take a position. Alright, it's back. I don't know why I'm getting these glitches. Alright. So I think that's better. Alright, then to do this, Should we just do the realloc? Yeah. So I think the first thing I want to do, if I have to resize it so it's too small for the gap, I want shift gap to position. So I shift the gap to the buffer's end position, which basically puts it in a position where I can easily enlarge it with realloc or something like that. And actually, I'm just going to use heap alloc. This is also wrong. Why did I put it at 0? Yeah. That's definitely the correct. Oh, so that was a bug. I'm trying to remember what's heap allocs. Can't remember what the second flag is for. Yeah, so just 0 if I want uninitialized. That should be fine. Just because I'm lazy and I want to use heap realloc if I can. So we shift the gap to the end position. We heap realloc. Now I have to... The gap start is where it always was. But the gap end... Oh, why I prefer Win32 APIs? Because I generally, I mean, this is perverse, but I try not to use the C standard library in Windows apps. Because, like, I don't know, if you're doing game stuff, you often end up writing your own platform layers, so it's just a habit. But it also means that if you want, you can run without the MSVC RT, which is a pain. I'm sure you know it's a pain in the ass because of all the redistributable nonsense. And I guess you can link it statically in some of the later versions of Visual Studio, but I think that has its own problems. So I just prefer to just use the DLLs, which means you can make small executables and you don't have redistributable headaches. All right, I definitely have to single step this code carefully because there's no way this is going to work. Okay, let's see here. So garbage pointer. Let's see. I would like to have a watch on buffer data, like 32. Am I high? Expression must have pointer type. Buffer data does have pointer type. Oh. Okay, here we go. So 0, 0. We currently have a gap of 2. We need a gap of at least 1. So this is an early out. We shift the gap to the current or the requested position. So current, this should not trigger. So we're good on that end. Then we write this in. Why didn't this update? Oh. Should probably make it a pointer in the main function just so we can have consistent watches. So this wrote in X, and the gap is there and end is there. No, I definitely shouldn't increment the end position, so that's wrong. That's garbage. It's because I had the wrong invariant. I already fixed a bug. Why didn't I initialize this? I was thinking it started at start position and moved up. That's complete garbage. Let's try again. So we know this works. And we have this and this. So that goes in. And now the gap closes effectively. That's correct. And now we do it again. And this is now position 1. So gap size is 1, and we want 1, so that's still going to work. This is 1, this is 1, so this should also just fall through. Now we get Y, and the gap closes. So now the gap is fully closed, and there's basically no capacity left. So next time through the loop, we should see something more interesting. This should now fail because this should be 0, and we need at least 1. So let's see, currently, okay, the gap is already at the end. So actually, this is going to fall through. This is currently 2, this can be 4. We copied this over, and you can see it still has the X and Y, even though I guess I didn't verify it was a new pointer, but if you were paying attention, you maybe saw that change. And update this to be 4 and this to be 4. Now the gap was shifted to the end, which means that this will now have to do an actual shift, I think, for the first time. So we want to shift to position 0, but it's currently at 2. So there's a gap delta of 2. So now what we should see is X and Y should shift into slot 2 and 3. You saw that. Now we don't kill the old elements here, because these are just garbage. Like, you might think we have to clear them out, but the gap is just uninitialized. We don't care about the values. And then we move these down to compensate. So now the gap is size 2. And since we subtracted the same value from both, the difference between them stayed constant, which is what you'd expect from a shift. So we've now shifted it there. And we are now going to insert an X, which is already there, so that was a fucking terrible choice of characters. And now we're going to shift the start position up. Okay, I mean, I really need to choose non-repetitive. Let's see here. All right, I'm also going to finish this command. Buffer gap. Let's just do something goofy like this. Dope. God, what's the... Is there to upper? Where the heck did this file come from? ATL, no way. Zero and 1. How about... All right. So I'm just going to step over it just to see the buffer gets filled in correctly. I just changed the loop so it goes through all the alphanumeric shit. Right. So you can see these got shifted over, and now capital B should go into the slot. And now the gap is going to grow again. And that was a bug, I think. Yeah. All right. There's definitely a bug with my shifting logic, most likely. Okay, let's think clearly here. So I'm going to step up until the point where it's starting to get funky. So we're now at a point where we have to grow capacity. Gap size is 0. Oh, I see the error. I shouldn't shift the gap to the end position. I should shift it to the end position minus the gap size. Oh, it's still complete fucking garbage. Okay. Let's see here. So far so good. And now we're going to insert C. Gap size is 0. Have to shift the gap. Oh. And I guess this is technically true. If there's no gap, I don't really need to shift the gap. I guess that's one thing that's sort of dubious. I'll just try that for a sec. I'll debug it if it turns out that's right. Because since the gap is always size 0 at the point where I hit that case, at least currently, because I always pass a minimum gap size of 1, and the only way the gap size can be less than 1 is for it to be 0. So let's just see if that works, and then we'll go back and figure out why that function isn't doing what I hope. So the current gap goes from 2 to 6. So 1. Yeah, that's definitely not right. So that wasn't the only issue. But let's just leave. Let me just read this carefully. So this is the case where A and A are in here. The gap is all the way at the end, as you expect. And now we say, well, we would like that to be twice as large. And so it manages to grow in place, which makes it sort of an annoying test case. And these both now increase up to that point. I think that sounds right. Then if we hit the God, that's not my intention. Let's just set a permanent breakpoint rather than this run to cursor shit. So that's the first case. I see, so it thinks there's a gap. So it thinks there's a gap from, well, 2 to 2. Oh, I see. It's because I'm not moving the start of the gap. Let me try it again with this. This is good. Start position end. This is actually what I want. Now, new end position is this. So the gap is at the end. This looks correct to me. So the gap goes from 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are garbage, which they shouldn't be. By the way, the least comfortable thing in the world is actually debugging like this on stream. It's like having someone older over your shoulder. Okay, I should do a close reading of this code. If you're trying to move the gap position somewhere before, calculate the delta. So we're trying to move it to 0. It's currently at so this should be 2, and the data should come from the data is being copied to 2, 4, so it's being copied 2, 2. So the current gap are these two elements, and it's saying those should come from. Oh, that's garbage. Yeah, I think that's right. So in this case, we're trying to move the gap there. In this case, like position, The position only really informs the delta, but that's it. So here that we're trying to move it up, which I think means you need to do it. Needs to be moved forward. Well, that's complete garbage. Let's see here. Okay, I really need to I should really just do that on paper rather than ASCII art. Then I'll figure it out in a second. So when you're moving it right or forward, you copy to start position from the end position by the gap delta. If you're moving it left, you copy to start position minus gap delta. Yeah. Well, that doesn't make sense because the gap. This is the part that's invisible. Let's see. Move it right. Move the gap right. Okay, so when you're moving left, you have to fill part of the gap that was exposed with data. Yeah. Well, do I want to write gap end position? Because when I move it right, the part that's exposed, yeah, that is actually start. And the part you copy is from the end. Let me single step it, since apparently the heat has gone to my brain. Okay, so far so good. So the gap is in the middle of, no, at the end of the buffer. And we have to shift it to 0. There's 2 bytes to copy. And so relative to this buffer, I have to copy these. Yeah, you're right. So if I did this, end position is currently 4. So I guess this should be start position instead. No, I want to, so in this case the position I want to move it to is here, and the gap is there. So I have to copy these two, 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. So gap is 2, start position is 2. I want to copy to this. Okay, so that's right. And now the gap is where it should be. Now the buffer is currently like this. I am being asked to move the cursor to position 4, which I guess is at the end. Gap is currently at 2. I don't think the gap is at 2. Oh, it is. It's just a zero size gap. So it's moving it to position 2 from position 2. I mean, that should be a no up. Okay, finally. Jesus. Okay. Okay. A, B, C, D. No, that doesn't look right. A, B, C, D. Okay, I think I'm just gonna see where it goes wrong, because it seems to be past the worst of it. So CC, and then this gap starts BBCA, DDCC. The gap goes from 2 to 2. EEDD. Gap goes from 2, 16. All right. J, K. Where did the I go? Buffer. Why does the buffer start there? That sounds wrong. Okay. So the gap is currently between the capital H and the lowercase g. So this is the I. Insert gap size. Gap's definitely not large enough. Want to shift the gap to the end, which is effectively an O up. Has to be moved from this to this. So this shouldn't do anything. It didn't. And then this goes up to 16. And now we're ready to from 16 to 32. And the A cuts off here, and now we have a bunch of garbage afterwards, which is fine. The gap start is at 16, so the gap is all the way at the end, as you would want. We now want to shift the gap to the beginning of the buffer, which is before 16. So basically, this whole range from 0 to 16 now has to be copied from 16 to 32. Looks good to me. So now the gap is at the beginning of the buffer, 0 to 16. And then H. I see. So I think the reason I thought there was a bug before was actually because of the move had left sort of junk data behind that was a replica of the old one. So we're inserting an I, and it will go there. So it effectively goes I, and then the next part of the buffer starts at 16, so it goes IH. How big is the buffer now? LL. The buffer gap is 2. So the first 2 are valid. But then that seems rare. Seems wrong. LM. The gap should be at 4 here. does it think this is part of the gap? Because that would mean these two positions are garbage. Gap start. So I want to move the gap to 0, which means I have to move. Yep, I have to move them there. I have to move the gap from 2 to 4, which means that alright, I'm really gonna do this because I'm going crazy with the watch inconsistencies. Okay, so latest, the gap didn't get pushed there. What happened with F? Wait, what are you saying with the... Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, that's what you meant. Yeah, that's a good point. What the heck? You're always moving by whatever the actual gap size is. Well, now I confused myself because I changed it halfway. So when you're moving it right, you're copying into the gap at the gap position, which was previously uninitialized data, and you're copying it from where the end was. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. I think I'm just really stupid right now. Let me think it through. I was thinking, I think I had this wrong starting point where I was thinking that, for example, suppose you have a large gap and you slide it over by one. In theory, then you can copy a little bit from the leading edge to the back edge. Well, I think that is true, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to run this, but it's not. God. Yeah, that's not right either. I mean, you basically, you're filling in the part of the gap that's exposed. So when you're moving, okay, now I'm really being stupid. When you're moving it to the right, hmm, moving it to the right, end to n plus delta. Dope. Okay, now I'm getting into the true brain freeze territory where I need to, like, when you're moving it left. Oh, that's overwrite. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I know. Start to start. I mean, this was fucking terrible. I think I'm gonna grab some food and then actually solve the problem when I'm not being an idiot on stream. Yeah, it is. No, you're right. Yeah, no, you're totally right because it's basically the post, like, yeah, yep, yeah. I'm a fucking idiot. It's like the standard pre-increment versus post-increment. Thank you for unfucking me. Jesus Christ. All right. So let's actually draw some fucking shit before I lose my mind. All right, let's do the. Yeah, like I know exactly what you meant when you wrote it. I'm really being stupid right now, but basically, it's do you know this thing when you're doing stack stuff where you do like either this or or this in the anyway, it's kind of like that because of the inclusive exclusive intervals I'm using, and I'm being an idiot. But anyway, so that was embarrassing. I guess we'll move right along. Pretend that never happened. All right. So the funny story is like literally the only other time I did a coding stream, I had the same thing where I made rapid progress, and then I got stuck on something stupid. And back then, I immediately just said, "Fuck it, I'm disconnecting," and then I solved it in 10 minutes, and I just reopened the stream. So there's some sort of when I start feeling embarrassed about making stupid errors, then I just get stuck. So it's not ideal. I have to get used to this. All right, all right. Okay. Let's try to do some rendering for this. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I think I have to figure out DirectWrite. I saw something called text layout, which I can probably use for persistent. Create text layout. Seriously, you like my stream? This is like the worst shit I've ever fucking seen. So I looked at this at glance at one point, and I was hoping, like, the way it's set up right now, it looks like you have to create a text layout, which will entail heap allocation and all kinds of stuff. Hang on. Just to see if I didn't break the DirectWrite. Okay, so this stuff is still there. Oh yeah, ring buffer. That's always good. To draw a format string. Yeah, so I was hoping this API, like right now, I can see there's a way to create a text layout. By the way, a DirectWrite text layout, as far as I can tell, is basically if you want to do any sort of measurement on the layout. But I also want to try to use it for incremental. I guess I could just do it by line. Okay. Actually, let me do it that way. No. Like I would like to be able, you don't really know where the gap in the line is, so you want to be able to sort of piece together what to draw. Hang on. Like you want to be able to take a line that's like split in two halves by the gap and draw it as two separate substrings, but with the layout being kind of contiguous. I actually don't know if we can do that. Yeah, I guess we probably can't do that actually, because kerning would be one example. So maybe the way to do it. Okay, I think I know what I'm going to do. Draw a buffer. Draw the initial, okay, stop being helpful. Visual Studio. Draw the initial part of the buffer. Well, let's see. I guess what we want to do is basically let's just take like some fixed number of characters for a line, like either until you find a new line or you hit the max limit. So I think I'm going to create a function that copy characters. buffer. Could be line from buffer, I think. I'm going to put this first, since it's the primary thing being operated on. Destination size. Buffer position. So the basic loop goes like this. If this ever becomes equal to the buffer gap start, then it jumps the gap. And if it ever hits the end, then we break. And then this is basically as far as we got. And I think you can just do buffer data, buffer position. I'll include it down here. All right. So I'm just going to do a little test loop. I need to actually put a bunch of new lines in here. Okay, let's just see if the drawing still works with the new lines. Yeah, it does. All right. So I think then we want to, let's just say there's 256 characters. We have buffer position. Which is 0. Copy line from buffer. Buffer position. Probably going to rearrange this to like a non-infinite loop with breaks, but I just want to do it simple, straightforward, like this. Oh yeah, and this didn't actually break when you hit the new line, which is what I wanted. So termination conditions. If character is a new line, then break. I think I should have a helper function for incrementing. Move buffer position forward. I'm just going to do it by value. Yeah, I guess I'll use the standard assert. No. Okay, let's see here. I should use that same logic, the same function rather. So no, okay. I see. So anytime gonna be a little bit lazy here. I should probably return the how much was actually copied rather than just a position. If I did that, no. All right. I'll put debug string A. It's not printing anything. Oh, I haven't put anything in the buffer. No wonder. Oh, and this is, yeah. Guess we can do it that way. Okay. Well, at least that seemed to work. Did I botch that? So now I only do this if this check passes. I guess that's not technically true. This happens after the loop. Okay, I'm just going to leave it as a nasty thing for now. All right. So I guess we're gonna draw some stuff. I'm gonna eventually, well, actually I am gonna use UTF-8, I guess. Is that the first argument? Yeah. So this is the source string. For now it's just ASCII, but I'm going to make it UTF-8 when I get a little further. I guess I should call it... I'm actually going to name it something reasonable. Or something descriptive, rather. This is a character count, so it's actually, well, alright, so we're going to convert it to that shit. And I'm trying to remember what I did for my painting. So I should do a drawing here. What should I do for layout rectangle? I guess let's just use fixed text height for now. So layout rectangle left is x, right is x plus width, top is the origin. It's a little bit confusing. So we take the initial rectangle, the initial line height. Eventually I'm going to have to read this back, but for now I'm just going to hard code it. And so every time we draw a line, we basically have... I guess I can just set it up out here and increment it. I guess there should be some sort of current buffer. And this whole thing. Buffer line height. 30, 36, shit, I don't know. X, float applying rectangle, left. With. Should probably initialize that, shouldn't I? Holy shit. Can't believe that fucking worked. And you can actually see that they're drawing separate lines because of how it's reflowing. because they're overflowing each other, which means they don't get laid out together. All right, I think I have to like a set word wrapping, DirectWrite word wrapping, no wrap. Okay. I want to do something to exercise the handling of gaps in draw buffer. So probably I should do something where like I randomize, like was it shift gap to position. It's like, or 0. It's just a little hack. Okay, that is, I would say, not handling the gap shifting very well, so I have to figure out what the heck is going on there. Actually, I guess, no, it should never cause issues. Oh, the gap shifting logic? I think I fixed both. Let me check though. I don't think this is gonna work either. No, I mean I also don't, I'm getting too tired to make further changes. So in this case, it's moved it to the start from the end. And this is when moving the position rightward. I think this is correct for this case. Like they're kind of asymmetric. Yeah. If we hit the gap, then we jump the gap. I think that looks fine. So the invariant here is anytime you have... Oh, that's not necessarily true if the gap is at 0, is it? Huh, that's an interesting point. So the way I'm doing the jumps here, like my invariant basically is that anytime I'm in this loop, buffer position points to a legal position which is not in the gap. I need to have some more unified logic around, like, I mean, effectively what I want to do is this, but I need to have a more unified buffer movement system so I don't have to handle it case by case. Yeah, so that was the issue. Like when the gap was at 0, basically things were wrong. All right. All right. definitely not safe. Character 1. Flags, ychar stir. Okay, so that comes first. Default char. I have to check the buffer size, like this is, oops. Okay, that worked. Okay, I'm going to be, this is really, okay, this is not the way you should repaint. See if we can get some good buffer overflows going. Buffer overflows for the buffer overflow god. Oh, this is interesting. I wonder if you guys actually know what's happening here. Basically, um, copy line from buffer is not detecting the difference between, like, hey, you ran out of space, and hey, you hit the natural end of the buffer. So, anyway. There's some stuff I need to think about off stream. Um, I promise, like my initial idea with this was actually that I would jump in without any forethought, and probably not the best idea, honestly. But I will think about. I think the big areas I have to think about is like cursor stuff. I think one mistake I made with some of the cursor positions is there's actually like I'm confounding two different kinds of buffer positions. There are the one that are actual byte offsets, and those include gap start position, gap end position, and end position. And then there are things like, you know, cursors effectively stepping through the buffer, which should be indexed by character. So basically, character 5 in that logical sense should be character 5 regardless of where the gap is. And so I think the correct way to do that is to, like, first off, it's a separate type, if not at the C level, at least conceptually. And then there's a function which, you know, basically converts a logical index to a physical index. And all the increments, like rather than maintaining the invariant as you increment it, you just do it at access time. So it's always logical, it's always contiguous. It goes from 0 to the number of characters in the buffer, rather than, you know, jumping over the gap sort of auto-magically, which seems like the wrong thing to do. You know, the good news is that was not a lot of code for 3-4 hours or however long I did that. Alright. I'm going to think about those things in terms of the right abstractions, and then I'm also going to clean up the code and start structuring it. I kind of intentionally wrote it ad hoc as we went, but I have to start thinking a little bit about this. Alright guys, thanks for hanging out. I think I'm taking off now. It's getting late over here. I'm sorry for the stream being kind of crappy. I'll get better at it when I get used to having to think on the fly while people are watching. So, alright. See you guys.